Whew, boy, these Disney live-action remakes are something else. In the words of one Kyle Reese,
"It can't be bargained with, reasoned with, doesn't feel pity or remorse, and it will not stop."
but on the other hand, Lilo and Stitch looks pretty good. So, Snow White revolves around a princess who gets her name because she was born during a blizzard. Her parents are just rulers of a kingdom, but unfortunately meet their untimely demise, but not before unwittingly ushering in a successor to the throne, the evil queen. When the princess threatens the queen by being the fairest one of all, Snow White's life is put in danger and she must flee into the woods, where she meets none other than the 7 dwarfs, who agreed to help her in her struggles. Howdy, I'm the guy with no name. Thanks for stopping by my channel. If you enjoyed the video, show your support by liking and subscribing. I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers as quickly as I can, but without further ado, let's get back into the review. Snow White was directed by Mark Webb and stars Rachel Zegler as Snow White, Gal Gadot as the evil queen, Andrew Burnap as Jonathan, a dollar store Robin Hood type character who serves as a love interest to Snow White, and it also stars some of the worst 90s CGI you've ever seen as the 7 dwarfs. Let's get the positives out of the way first, since unfortunately there aren't that many. Unsurprisingly, Rachel Zegler definitely has the voice for what's required of her in the role, though I did find her acting to not be so great at times. Gal Gadot might be the best part of the movie because you can just tell she's having a fun time and eating up playing the villain. She does have some solo numbers that she sings though, and I thought her voice was, let's say, iffy at times. And then also I did appreciate that at least they approached the movie in a more creative way than just doing a shot-for-shot remake. That being said, in my opinion, this movie was ill-conceived and doomed from the start because of their approach. Snow White, as you may or may not know, is based on a fairy tale and also a remake of the 1937 Disney classic, and in both, she gets her name Snow White from her skin that is white as snow. And in this one, obviously, they have race-swapped the character, which always spawns debate and arguing, especially online. And in the past, I've seen anyone complaining about race-swapping. Usually, the defense is, well, I mean, there's nothing really about the character that would call for them to be that race that they are. Like, that character could be multiple races and it still wouldn't really change anything about them. And sometimes I've agreed, sometimes I have not agreed. In general, I'm more of a purist where if you're adapting something, I would prefer that you just keep the characters looking like they're supposed to and with similar characteristics and stuff like that. But I can see someone's point. In this case, though, the name of the whole story and the name of the character is Snow White because she has skin white as snow, and now they're changing it to she was born during a blizzard and is resilient and stuff. And I just think that that really changes the story a lot, and it's a culturally significant, you know, German fairy tale, and the 1937 movie is a classic, and it's really responsible for why Disney is as big as it is. So I just don't understand the race swapping. I feel like it's pretty indefensible that this is an obvious character who called for whoever's playing her to look a certain way. I mean, regardless of what race that is. Another point I'd like to make is how the movie handles the term fair and what definition it uses. Because in the 1937 movie, the queen is obsessed about who's the fairest one of all, as in who is the most beautiful of them all, and at one point, Snow White does surpass her in beauty. But in this one, and it feels like it's because it's 2025 now, and to have 2 women bickering and caring about who's more beautiful than the other is so backwards and, you know, not with the times. But in reality, I feel like they just missed the point entirely. The whole point is the queen is this vain, shallow person, and Snow White, meanwhile, is this down-to-earth, sweet, kind, loving, you know, helpful person, and she's always surpassed the queen in the movie's definition of fairest one of all. That's what also doesn't make sense. I don't know why the mirror suddenly decides to take it a different way than he's been taking it thus far. But that's the whole point, that the queen didn't care that Snow White was better in character than her. She only cared about her beauty, and as long as she was the most beautiful, she was satisfied. But as Snow White grew older and surpassed her, I think part of the reason the queen was so jealous and angry was that she just kind of didn't even try to surpass her. She just effortlessly and innocently surpassed her as the fairest one of all. And I think that just added a little bit more salt to the wound. So that's the whole point. The Queen is vain, Snow White is not. Also, I've been seeing a lot of little people, especially actors, coming out and saying that it's insulting that they opted to do these, you know, terrible CGI dwarfs instead of actually casting people in their group in these roles. And after all, the dwarfs really are the heroes in the 1937 original film, and they even avenged Snow White and caused the Queen's demise at the end. And you know, they each have their distinct features and emotions, and you know, they're funny, quirky, loyal, lovable, and yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know why. I think it's insulting that they passed up on casting little people in these roles. They're already limited in what roles they can take, and in a high-profile Disney film with dwarfs that are, you know, those characters are perceived in a positive light. Like I said, they're the heroes of the original. They're not as much in this one, but they're at least help Snow White. And yeah, I don't know why they opted for these creepy, uncanny valley dwarfs instead. And I will say though, they are slightly better than the original 2025 dwarfs. And I know I said that I appreciated them taking more of a creative effort than just doing a shot-for-shot remake, but unfortunately most of the changes they made to the story made it much worse than the original. For starters, like I said, the prince is basically a Robin Hood ripoff, a Flynn Rider without the humor, the charisma, if you will. But, you know, I can't complain at the end of the day because the prince in the original has a really small, simple role, and he has a lot more to do in this one at least. Also, changing Snow White from who she was in the original to now a fair-minded leader of sorts who's going to, you know, free her people was laughable to me, honestly. And I also noticed how she expertly avoids doing barely any cleaning and definitely no cooking for the dwarfs like she does in the original. You know, she's kind of like that person in a group project that everyone is annoyed with, who just skirts by doing as little for the group as possible and just rides everyone else's coattails. Like in that one scene that she's trying to get them to clean their house, instead of helping them, most of the time she's thrusting brooms into their hands. He's like, here, clean your house, because I want you to clean your house so I can live in a cleaner house. Meanwhile, in the movie, it kind of came across as like it was a thank you, that, hey, thank you for allowing me to break into your house and help myself to your bed and then letting me stay here and for protecting me from the Queen. And as a thank you, I'm going to provide a much needed woman's touch to this whole area, and you know, let's clean the house, and I'll cook for you guys if you'll let me stay, and also I'll help you with hygiene and grooming. There's a lot of added musical numbers to this as well, and new songs, and I don't mind that. It makes sense, but there seemed to be literally zero effort put into making these songs mesh with the songs from the original that are returning in any way at all. They really don't go well at all. And I bet someone who hadn't even seen the original 1937 one, if you told them, hey, some of these are from the old movie and some of these are new, can you pick out which ones? I bet most everybody would get that 100% correct. And the problem too is they're not even catchy songs, really. I thought none of them were catchy or memorable, and they were very modern and very kind of stereotypical musical numbers, so I wasn't impressed. And then on top of that, rather than realizing that, hey, all these new songs we're making are inferior to the original songs, so let's at least kind of maybe emphasize the ones from the original. No, they instead emphasize the new songs, and even like the musical score has lots of musical cues that call back to their songs, not to the ones from the 1937 one. And those are really just, they're so good and classic and timeless that they are really the DNA of Snow White. Finally, I also want to talk about the Rachel Zegler controversy with all the PR stuff with the movie. And normally I don't talk about stuff like that, but I feel like it's important here because if you don't know, she basically criticized the original 1937 film and said it's weird and definitely not suitable for 2025, and how in this story Snow White is not pursuing a prince and is not looking for a man, and which, by the way, if you remember in the original one, the prince actually sought her out first, and I don't know what's wrong with that. The feelings were mutual, and she wanted to, at the end of the day, be with someone she cared about and loved. What's oppressive about that? I'm not really sure. And then along those lines, she joked that because of that, maybe the actor who's playing the prince, maybe his entire part will be cut, which is not funny if you're an actor. That's not funny at all, because that happens all the time. After all that stuff, she got some backlash, and she posted a video basically comparing herself to a flawed but rare piece of art in the Louvre that she hopes that people will still line up to see her work even though she's flawed, just like people line up in the Louvre to see a piece of art even though it's flawed, which came across as pretentious. And there's also a kind of pseudo feud that she started with Gal Gadot, kind of throwing shade at her about defending her homeland, and not to get into all that stuff, but just saying not a very good look. It just looked very ugly, and overall she just came across as very insufferable, and she kind of tanked my anticipation of the whole movie. I just didn't enjoy it very much, and I really can't rate it higher than a 1 out of 5 stars, which I'm pretty sure is the lowest I've ever rated anything before. But it's just, like I said, did not enjoy it at all. Let me know in the comments if you've seen this movie yet, and if so, do you agree with me, or was I too harsh? Or if you have no plans to see it, what were your thoughts on the original one? And because I feel like that one is a, despite what Rachel Zegler says, it is a timeless piece of art, and very influential. And going to Rotten Tomatoes, the remake has a 46%, while the original has a 97%. So pretty sure that's telling that the original will last way past the remake. And in the words of Venom, it'll float away like a turd in the wind. But anyways, guys, I appreciate it. This is the guy with no name, signing off.